Our first speaker today is no stranger to you all. It's Juan Benet, creator of Filecoin and CEO of Protocol Labs. He'll be talking about the pathway to Filecoin as a verifiably environmentally positive network. A very warm welcome, Juan.
It's super exciting to be here speaking to everybody. This is a topic that so many of us are incredibly passionate about as we look ahead in this moment in history and we think about the great challenges of our time. And it's always important to kind of think about how we can do our part, improve things, and try to make sure that our projects are doing what we can to improve things for the world. So I'm really excited to be kicking off this conference today. There's a ton of really amazing activity, and I'm super proud to say that the Filecoin network is leading the charge in the green blockchain world, and you'll hear about lots of really amazing things today that show some of that progress so far and hint at what we can do. We can do as a network. One of the big things, I think everybody coming to this will probably agree on this, and this doesn't need more. Need a lot of discussion. There's already plenty of discussion, but just to set baseline, a lot of us here are taking a lot of actions because we think that climate change is an existential risk. It's an existential risk for humans, and it's an existential risk for large species, an existential risk for all our societies and economies and so on. And I think that there's this phenomenal visualization and graph from XACD that really puts the matters into perspective. It has like this amazing sense of just the warming of the planet over time and just the change that's happening now. What I want to spend the time discussing is both what Web3 enables and the advantages of Web3 when it comes to trying to create green economies or green subsets of an economy, and then why Filecoin is especially positioned to make a significant impact here. I want to give the project a sense of mission towards this. So one of the key things about Web3 is that it makes claims verifiable. So a lot of Web3 is about creating mechanisms and creating structures by which people can introduce some information into the network and create a verifiable trace of activity and verifiable trace of transactions to over time create like a trustless structure by which people can agree on sequences of events and so on. This is the baseline innovation that blockchains ride on that enable just simple payment transactions, enable currencies, enable smart contracts, and so on. And this is precisely what can make all of the different kinds of verifiable claims and assets and so on associated with green economies much better and much more verifiable. So there's all kinds of problems around green assets in terms of making them verifiable, tracing the provenance over time, tracing the quality, and so on, that Web3 could actually significantly improve. So Web3 can come in to actually help improve how a lot of these economies function. There's a ton of tooling being built around NFTs and around structures representing property and representing non-fungible assets. And all of that tooling can be reused and repurposed for things like REX and carbon credits and other kinds of offsetting assets. We can also build structures to measure and create accountability for externalities in systems. So meaning we can use estimates and measures from within a system to understand and gauge what the effects of a system might be, and then account for those within the system. So an example of this might be within a particular blockchain. We'll talk about this in terms of Filecoin, estimating the energy use or estimating the energy expenditure of all participants in that network, and then be able to kind of weave that estimate into mechanisms within the chain, within that system, to account for those kinds of systems. So one of the big problems in energy expenditures in general, and in the problem with climate change and so on, is that it's extremely difficult for many kinds of systems to measure those externalities or to make them, or even if they are measured, it's difficult to enforce accountability with large corporations and governments and so on to actually behave in a certain way. But when you have mechanism design at your disposal and you can build things into systems, that can totally change, and you can build large scale systems that coordinate and incentivize systems to actually improve how things happen. So this is one of the things that I think is incredibly exciting about Web3 enabling green economies, and it's an extremely promising situation. It gives all Web3 platforms and Web3 blockchain systems a massive advantage in being able to outperform the rest of the world and the rest of the cloud platforms and so on in creating green economies and in creating not just getting to zero emissions, but actually getting to net negative emissions and to start sequestering carbon and so on. So I think that Filecoin could really enable green economies. I think we could get to be the first self-organized green computing platform, and this involves storage, but also computation and whatnot. And I think that Filecoin could become the greenest blockchain protocol and cryptocurrency. I think we have a lot of work to do to get there. And I think it would be phenomenal if we do that. And I'll spend the rest of the conversation here talking about and exploring how we might be able to do that. At the end of the day, I think all of us participating in the Filecoin network want our work and our network and so on to cause great beneficial environmental externalities. So instead of having systems or participating in economies that have negative environmental externalities, I think that everybody would be much better off if we can create beneficial environmental externalities. So for those unfamiliar, Filecoin is a decentralized storage network designed to store humanity's most important information, and we want to Filecoin uses a set of mechanisms to organize the work of participants around the world to provide us to create a storage network and retrieval network for data. So one of the key components of the Filecoin network is this notion of storage providers. These are participants coming together from around the world, pulling in hardware, operating the network, and storing participants' data and serving it over time. And you can think of the broader Filecoin economy as an island economy where many participants with different roles come together, take on different roles. There are researchers that are figuring out components in protocols. There are developers that are turning that research into software and into tools that people can use. There are storage providers that are using that software to organize hardware that they might import from the outside of the economy and turn it into the useful cloud storage service. And then there are then that cloud storage service can be packaged and given and sold to clients coming from outside of the economy. So over time, the goal of the Filecoin network is to create this this economy that can turn sort of like the raw material, so to speak, of disks and electricity and other types of hardware, and turn it into a much more useful process of providing valuable cloud storage to the rest of the world, and then bring in potential clients and other participants to engage in these networks. And of course, there are many other, this is a simplified view. There are many other participants like application developers and other networks and other platforms and so on that couple here, but this is kind of a simplified view of how different economic participants can operate. Now, when you think about this image and you think about green Filecoin, just think about all the different processes that are happening around this economy and how each of those could become more green. So one example is as we all start getting together in physical spaces and in different conferences and whatnot, being able to offset all of our activity and not just getting to zero again, but like getting to be kind of net negative would be one way that the Filecoin economy could account for its use of resources and make it green. The big one that we're going to be talking about today is related to storage providers and using the hardware and running it with electricity to maintain the network. That's the sort of the biggest expenditure of the Filecoin network, and we've done a ton of work as a project to kind of improve things in that realm. But over time, this sort of extends this intent to greenify Filecoin extends to all corners of the economy, and over time, we want to create a really useful process. So one of the pieces of good news here is that Filecoin is already one of the greenest blockchains around, and so it is very possible for us to lead the charge here. Our proof of useful work consensus is based on valuable, not wasteful work. So already a lot of the work that goes into the process of building blocks and maintaining the blockchain and so on is useful and is creating some valuable externalities that we then use to weave into the useful cloud storage. So this is not wasteful work like many other proof of work blockchains. It's also the case that proof of storage blockchains tend to be much more energy efficient than proof of work blockchains, just arranging bits in matter and keeping them that way and using that as a consensus building process is a more energy efficient way of doing things than just constantly spending energy in a proof of work process. And the most energy intensive processes within Filecoin, the biggest one, which is sealing, is around on par with normal data center workloads, and so that's really good news for Filecoin in being able to kind of sort of match the rest of the world and how the rest of the world operates in terms of its activity. And electricity is a lower fraction of the cost structure for service for storage providers than in other blockchains. So electricity is a much lower fraction of the storage provider's cost than, say, in a proof of work blockchain like Bitcoin or something like that. And in addition to that, Filecoin makes it easy to offset with REX and other kinds of offsets, because service providers and storage providers have an identity which can be linked to assets. So results and all different actors in the system have identities where you can sort of estimate their activity and segment what they're doing, and then enable individuals to be able to sort of improve their conditions and purchase offsets and so on, linked to their identity. So the work outputs over time can also be linked to these kinds of offsets. So think of individual sectors or sealing and so on, which can be linked to service providers and to clients. You can use that to model the energy use of all of the activity, and you can estimate how the impact and the footprint of that activity, and then offset it. So the good news is that by using the blockchain, using the identities linked in the chain, SP's clients and other participants can be linked to REXTCs and others. So this enables us to do some kind of green accounting across the entire protocol. One other really great component here is that Filecoin and IPFS enable storing all of the artifacts related to green offsets. So things like the actual certificates, the information about what different participants are doing, all of that. You can think of needing a global database and a global storage network to be able to store all of this information and make it verifiable and permissionless and all of that. And that is precisely what Filecoin and IPFS are for. So already the network is perfectly tuned for solving the problems that green economies tend to have around being able to kind of have assets that are verifiable, that anybody can access, and so on. And one big change that a lot of the people in the community are talking about is the addition of the FEM, which is kind of the computable layer to Filecoin, and adding the ability to have smart contracts and whatnot. That'll come in to help a lot with this kind of structure, so that enables the actual issuing of NFTs and so on that can represent REX and so on. And the FEM is going to have EVM compatibility, so that's going to enable all of the work that people have been doing with EVM-based contracts and whatnot, for green economies to just smoothly plug into Filecoin, and then Filecoin be able to interact with Ethereum and with all of the other chains in this green economy. There's a great talk about FEM coming later in the week, so if you're interested in that, definitely go check it out. So, putting all these things together, I really think that Filecoin could be, the first self-organized green computing platform. We can create the greenest blockchain protocol and cryptocurrency, and we can be a producer of beneficial environmental externalities. So why might want to do this? Why is this a priority? If you aren't convinced by the existential risk nature, which I think it oftentimes is reason enough, I can also make the case that this is a phenomenal business advantage for the Filecoin network and for Filecoin network participants. If we lean into this and turn this into a great advantage for Filecoin, we can beat many other cryptocurrencies and blockchains that are stuck in a different view, and we can beat Web2 cloud storage providers and so on. So, as you probably know, you've probably heard of the massive energy expenditure that Bitcoin and other proof of work currencies and blockchains are causing, and you've probably heard of Bitcoin over time being restricted or banned or discouraged in different countries around the world because of the level of electricity use, because of the unpredictability, because of the use of sort of dirty energy instead of green energy, and of the perceived bad environmental impact of all these facilities. There's of course also the drawing to the hardware itself, but just looking at the electricity itself is a major cause for why policymakers around the world are really concerned about Bitcoin specifically, but other currencies like that. So clean industry, so turning Filecoin and other blockchains into clean industry that is not just goes to net zero, but actually becomes net negative, where having Filecoin operate in your nation, having Filecoin source providers operating in your network is a net benefit, a positive externality for your environment. Could completely turn the tide here, and we might see different governments and policymakers worldwide drawing Filecoin and asking for service providers and creating incentives for storage providers to come into their nations, into their communities, and so on, to have the green and clean and net carbon negative externalities of the Filecoin network. So I think we can turn this into a massive business advantage for Filecoin, where policymakers will then prefer Filecoin to thrive in their economies than not having it, or will prefer it to other potential blockchains or other currencies. So we can get to a point where policymakers can invite Filecoin while rejecting other blockchains, or where they're inviting Filecoin and rejecting other cloud storage companies. So think of Web 2 facilities and Web 2 systems that may not be nearly as successful in greenifying and causing net negative emissions. So it makes perfect business sense for Filecoin to become the greenest blockchain in the world and the greenest storage platform in the world. So countries in general tend to seek green industry. So this would be great for Filecoin. Again, it is already easy for Filecoin to track and use REX and to estimate its energy use, and over time estimate all of the hardware externalities and so on, and account those and use mechanisms within the protocol to offset those. Filecoin has a great subsidy that can help us do all of this, that can help orient us in that direction. Filecoin can be better than other Web3 blockchain platforms on this, and it can be better than Web2 cloud platforms. So many cloud storage platforms and so on find it difficult to do these kinds of estimations, or don't do them in general. And if you put them in directly into the mechanisms, and you do it worldwide once directly in the protocol, that becomes a dramatically more powerful mechanism than what many centralized cloud storage providers could do. I think in general, Filecoin participants will kind of be really excited, and the morale will be higher as they improve the world. So I think this can be a fantastic positive benefit for everybody participating in Filecoin, to say, hey, like you want to have are you worried about climate change, or do you want to make an impact? Come into this network and help greenify all industry and all cloud platforms. So how do we make Filecoin green? You'll hear all about this in the upcoming talks. I'm going to give a super quick summary here. We need to set measurable goals for the whole project. So achievable, ambitious, but first and foremost, very measurable goals for the whole project. And then we need to make tools to measure that energy use and carbon footprint, estimate what we're using as a whole network, estimate what SPs, clients, and other participants are doing. And then over time, kind of measure purchases of REX and other kinds of offsets, put all of that data into things like reputation tools and whatnot, and then weave those into actual mechanisms and protocols. So think of this as a great iterative process where we're going to make our way into this, but that'll give us the facilities to make Filecoin green, where we can get to over time also preferring green services and green hardware providers. So Filecoin could create a selective pressure for industry itself and the manufacturers of disks and GPUs and other kinds of hardware to become much greener. And then over time we can sort of offset a lot of our uses with different kinds of offsetting instruments. So one of the things that I want the whole network to do is to not settle for zero. So the whole world right now is having trouble even convincing people to get to zero, but zero is no longer enough. We need to dramatically start getting into net negative emissions. Most of the industry shoots for just neutrality and zero emissions. We must accelerate the correction, and that means that we need to shoot for being net carbon negative. And because Filecoin in general aims to be a broadly beneficial technology for the planet and for all of us and for humans around the world, improving our environment and improving our conditions is totally on par with the goals of the network. So I think we can be 10x better. I think that Filecoin can and should aim to be 10 times greener than what the rest of the industry is aiming for. So that means that our net carbon emissions, whatever we do, we should be able to have negative 10x whatever we use. And I know that it's a super aggressive goal. Like that sounds super intense, but I think you will find that Web3 and crypto gives us the mechanisms and the tooling to create this kind of goal and to achieve it as a whole network pulling together. So things over time, things like REX and other offsets for all participants will help us get there. So this is not going to be done in isolation with just our hardware and whatnot. This has to be done as part of members of a much larger economy. And these are, again, not perfect solutions. So think of all of this as iterative over time, starting to improve things, and over time getting to kind of ratchet our way into a much greener future. So here are some ideas that I'll drop on the table, but over time we can discuss later in the day. Things like Filecoin Plus could support Filecoin Green. So things like Filecoin clients could over time choose SPs who score well in Filecoin Green. We can also think of weaving other kinds of incentives directly into Filecoin Green. We could come up with a greenest performance indicator for the whole network. We already can do this for service providers, but I would love to see it for clients itself and for other participants in the economy. So other groups that are making lots of transactions and so on, being able to kind of estimate their activity. I would love to sort of create whole network KPIs to optimize those kinds of that kind of performance and orient the whole network with incentives to achieve certain targets. I would love to, over time, as the Filecoin network starts gathering back together, have some kind of oracle and verifiable trace of, that describes our impact in the world as we hold those events, and then be able to kind of weave offsets directly into the network. And then I think this is a much harder thing to do, but I think we could totally have an impact here, which is to orient the world towards verifiably green hardware. So start securing the provenance of hardware itself, and that means all of the components and so on, but also create kind of sort of select hardware that has that comes with certification around its level of greenest and so on, and then be able to use that as a component directly into the protocol itself. So being able to kind of check those verifiable claims and whatnot, and gain incentives. Again, all of this is possible and in great thanks to the mechanism design facilities that Web3 gives us. And all of this is about using positive incentives to pave the way towards this much better future. Great. So I'll stop here, and I'll now let all of the other amazing people working on all of this tell you how we're going to get there, how we can make this possible, and so on. Thanks so much.